Welcome, Diana Larsen. It's so nice that you're here with me for our interview.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Sacha.
It's an honor. Okay, great. I don't think I have to introduce you to our audience. I mean, it's hard to be in the Agile community and not to know your name, your work on teams, on retrospectives, the Agile fluency model, to name just a few topics. So again, welcome and thanks for being with us.
Oh, I wish I could be there in person.
Yeah,
but, time and distance gets in the way. So yeah,
it's not around the corner.
Yeah.
Well, you have been in the industry for quite some time now, I would say.
Yeah.
And I guess Agile has undergone a certain kind of maybe evolution or any kind of changes. So what about your view on that? How has your perspective on things or your viewpoint or your work changed over the years in this Agile thing?
Well, I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of a longer answer because it has to do with my perspective on this. And I went back to college after I went early and then I took some time out. I went back to college in the early 1980s, early to mid 1980s. And I thought I was going to go into the computer science program. Mm-hmm. And I started with the first, I was taking all the math classes and I started with the first programming class, which I loved. I loved that class. But at the end of it, the professor said, asked me what my interest was. And I said, well, I'd like to be a systems analyst. I mean, I was already sort of doing systems thinking at that time. And my dad had been a systems analyst. So I really loved playing with flowcharts and things when I was a kid even. And so one way and another, he counseled me out of the program and suggested that I retain my love of computers, but work in some other field and, just compute there. And he also predicted that computers were going to become so easy to use that, there was going to be voice activation and stuff that, programming was not going to be that big. Well, what he couldn't predict, he was a hardware guy. And he couldn't predict the explosion of software. But anyway, I thought he had my best interest at heart. So I went off and got involved in the things I got involved in, which was still systems thinking, but in terms of organizational systems and work process and those kinds of things. So throughout the rest of the 80s and the 90s, as I was working, I was primarily working in high tech. I was here in Portland, Oregon, a lot of high tech companies. I worked a lot in the silicon wafer fabrication, manufacturing kinds of companies. So I worked in high tech, but and I just had begun to work in IT part of high tech, right? To begin to think about that, when I got invited to an event where I met a bunch of people, a bunch of software programmers, developers, who some of whom ended up being Agile manifesto writers. Yeah. Right. And so we talked about, what I had been doing and what they were doing. And I really recognized these were the people I wanted to be around all along. It had started 15 or 20 years before, but this was I liked how these people think. I like their jokes. I like, Cool. And so through that connection, I was kind of there from the beginning of Agile. I was taking extreme programming boot camp courses in 2000 and 2001 and started speaking at conferences. And so, yeah, I have been in this world for a long time. In 2000, I think it was 2003, I joined the Agile Alliance board of directors, and I was there for a few years, and then my term was over and I left. And but then a few years later, they lured me back again, and so I rejoined the board in 2007. And it's been my place ever since. Really, the intersection of Agile and the reason that I wrote a lot of the books I've written is bringing in what I had learned from those earlier experiences and my love both of being in the software world of Agile and organization design. And from early on, I could see that those two were going to be closely connected, and work process design and those kinds of things. So that's how I got here to be with you today.
Great.
That's a short, I mean, it's a long, but it's the short version of the story. Yeah.
And talking about Agile Manifesto signees, yeah. I think you authored, was it your first book? I'm not sure. The retrospective book you authored with Ken Schweber.
Well, he wrote the foreword for the book. Yeah, because we connected. Esther and I connected with him early. Yeah.
That's early on.
Yeah, very early on. Yeah.
Speaking about those books, I think I heard there is a second edition coming of the retrospective book. Is that correct?
There is a second edition coming sometime in early 2023. I'm not exactly sure, when that's going to be, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they haven't set a date for publication. I mean, you'll know about it because we'll be talking about, hey, it's available for pre-order, but not yet. Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, okay, as this is an interview for the Agile Scale Camp, obviously I want to talk about Agile at scale, scaling Agile. There has been a lot going on in that field over the years, and sometimes it works, and in my view, often it does not work. So what is your take on Agile at scale, scaling Agile?
Well, as a co-creator of the Agile Fluency model, my stance is reflected there. My stance has always been kind of methodology and framework agnostic. So I don't care, whether someone wants to use SAFe or has a reason to think they should use SAFe or Nexus or LESS or DAD or one of the ones that I'm most interested in because it's so connected with open space meetings is Fast Agile. But, I'm not a follower of any of those except as a sort of loyal supporter of everybody who's doing Agile. I've also always felt that what we need to do, and this comes, I guess, from my work process design days and so on, what we need to do is look at what's the nature of the work, what's the needs of the customer, what are the expectations for the business, what kinds of growth do they think they need, so on and so forth. So what kind of a work environment do they want to create, right? And all of those things are important. And so I think whatever approach you want to take, you want to make sure that you're considering all of those things and creating out of the various practices and proficiencies and possible approaches to having a more agile work environment to get the benefits of Agile. It takes some tailoring. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I think that a lot of the aspects, like I said, practices, proficiencies, mindsets, and so on, of different methods and frameworks fit in different places and are a good fit for different places. And I think what happens an awful lot is people do want to kind of go with the, well, one size fits all. Mm-hmm. When really, I think a tailored solution is probably always going to be best. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when we think about it, when we think about scaling, you know, does it make sense to think about, given the nature of the work and the nature of the customers and the expectations of the business, does it make the most sense to have 5 to 7 person teams or 9 person teams, or does it make the most sense to have 25-person teams?
Okay.
Does it make the most sense to set yourselves up to be, set your portfolios up to be lean and mean, and we're really just going to double down on a couple of things? Or do we need a lot of products in the pipeline? And if so, what difference does that make to how we structure our organization to allow for growth? I mean, scaling just means allow for growth. Mm-hmm. You know, and when I feel bad is when I get a call like I did not too long ago from a local nonprofit here in Portland, Oregon, who had decided they really wanted to get the benefits of their small software team. I think they had 2 or 3 pretty small teams, 3 or 4 people per team working on different things. They thought, you know, we want to get the benefits of Agile. We want to be able to connect with our customers and get their feedback. And we want to be able to make sure that we are, you know, giving them that value as often as they want to get value, and some of those kinds of things. So they had their own reasons for that. And they were telling me about this journey and, you know, what they were experiencing so far. And they were talking to me because they weren't really satisfied with what was happening. And they said, well, you know, we had somebody in here the other day who's a SAFe consultant, and they want to bring in SAFe. And they started describing the full panoply of SAFe, right? Mm-hmm. Now, these are people who maybe want to grow another 2 teams this year, small, you know, and maybe consolidate or maybe not, but they're not looking for, you know, huge John Deere sized growth, right? They're not looking for that. And I was just like, why, except for unenlightened self-interest, is this consultant trying to sell them on SAFe as a process? They just want business. They don't care about this customer, because if they did, they would realize that SAFe is a really bad fit here. And they would begin to look at some other things. Yes, they want to scale, but, you know, let's look at the size of the scale they need to do. And let's look at the nature. I mean, it's a nonprofit. They're involved in nonprofit involved in environmental issues. And you know, so I guess that's my point of view. You know, sometimes the best way to scale is just to pick a couple of teams and get them going well, and then begin to infect other teams. Sometimes the organization doesn't have time or has too many teams for that kind of a graduated approach. Well, so then maybe they do need to look at Les or Dad, or, you know, well, I guess Dad isn't around anymore. It got subsumed into SAFe or into something. But, you know, Nexus, or maybe they do need to look at some of those bigger scaling things. But those big methodologies are not the answer in every situation. And so it's just that I know that organizations need to scale. You know, practically, that just for many reasons that may need to happen. And I want to encourage folks to take a more nuanced approach to it, and not just, without thinking, grab the first big framework that comes their way and assume that's going to work for them. And the same is true for tooling and for all kinds of things. You know, find the tools, find the approaches that are going to be the best fit for your situation. And for that, you need advice, either it's somebody internal who's willing to research all of those things and come up with a sense of what needs to happen, or you need to connect with a trusted advisor who will show you a number of different options, not just here's the package, buy this, which often seems like the simplest thing in the short term. But it is short-term thinking. It's not going to serve you long-term. And if you adopt something like that, you're going to end up having to wind a bunch of it back. And that's going to be a waste of time in the future. So take that time up front and figure out what you need and what's going to best serve your organization.
Nice.
That's my best advice about scaling.
That's cool. Thanks a lot.
I may have just, made 2/3 of your audience very angry. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't hope so, and I don't think so. Talking about agile scaling, how does the agile fluency model fit in this landscape?
Well, the agile fluency model, people have heard me say this a lot of times, is a model of team behaviors, observable team behaviors. You can use the model to look at what's going on in our teams right now and what do we want to have going on in our teams. So so we say it's a model of observable team behavior that has enormous leadership and organizational implications, right? So it's a way of thinking about what an organization might need based on what expectations they have for their software teams. So, and what are the needs of so it's what's the product, what's the nature of the product, what's the nature of the customer. Again, a lot of those things I was just talking about. What kinds of teams do we need for what outcomes? And some organizations pick one zone. They say we just need teams that perform in this zone, and that works. Other organizations say, well, we need a few teams that are in this zone and a few more teams that are in that zone, and just maybe a couple of teams that are in this other zone. The Agile Fluency model helps to foster that conversation. It creates kind of a boundary object that helps us think about what are the total organizational needs, what does that mean for our expectations of teams, and then if the teams aren't already performing to those expectations, it also gives some clues about what investments the organization needs to make to help the teams have the skills and proficiencies they need to meet expectations. So it's a lens that you can use to analyze what are the needs for scaling, for instance. That comes into the conversation a lot. Different things, I was talking with one of our licensed facilitators, Bart Den Haag, the other day. He's based out of the Netherlands, and he wrote a book called Moving the Needle, Lean and OKRs, or I wrote a foreword for it. I don't know why I can't remember the subtitle, but he's done a lot of work. He's an Agile Fluency licensed facilitator, and he understands the world of OKRs very, very well. And we were having a conversation the other day, and he said, a lot of organizations are talking about pushing OKRs down to the team level, right? And if you're familiar at all with the Agile Fluency model, which he and I both were, so we were having this conversation, he was saying, teams in the focusing zone and the delivering zone, they don't have the agency. They don't have, they do great work at what they're doing, but they aren't set up to create and maintain their own OKRs. Teams in the delivering zone, teams in the strengthening zone, yes, but not the focusing and delivering zone. So that's the kind of conversation that the Agile Fluency model enables in an organization. So yes, have OKRs, start them at the executive suite, bring them down. But at some point, you have to realize, beyond this, you're asking people to do something they can't possibly do because they don't have the rest of the permissions and not just responsibilities, but then also the capacity, the ability to make decisions for themselves and so on, that they would need to be able to really run their own OKRs at that level.
Interesting.
So those are the kinds of conversations that we end up having when we use the Agile Fluency model as a lens. We want to invest just enough in our teams, but not so much that we are burdening them with expectations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So what if I were to be charged with the agile transformation of, let's say, a big segment in an old school enterprise, old work enterprise, and if I were lucky enough to have you on my side, I mean, this is work you do, right? Actually, I could hire you and you would help me.
Yeah.
So what would you do? Do you have any tips and tricks? How would you make, with your whole magic, 4,000 people agile? How would we go at that?
Well, I probably, it's likely I would not take on that work because my preference is to work not with the really huge organizations.
Interesting.
Because there's so much bureaucracy, so much communication overhead, so much, that it really is hard to make a discernible difference in a reasonable amount of time. Certainly, turning the battleship is possible, and we see people who do that. But that's when we say, this might take you 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Right. So when people from a large organization get in touch with me, I say, well, where do we want to start? Is there a division? Do we want to start just in if there's one IT that's serving the whole company? Do we want to just start in IT? Do we want to start in if they have a distributed IT in different divisions? Do we want to start in this division? Let's kind of do proof of concept in a way that we can get our heads around, and in a way where there are leaders who are able to make the kind of decisions that will move things along. And so that would be my first place to start, and making sure that those leaders in that department or division or whatever segment of the organization we're in, that they have the support of the structure above them to do what needs to be done to really run a really good experiment around this. And both budget and decision-making authority and, support from staff and other kinds of things. And then I sit down with the leaders in that organization and we have a conversation about the Agile Fluency model. What is it you really want from your teams? And before I move further than that, I would begin to talk about the fact that before we start working with teams, before we start trying to make any changes in teams, we need to work with the leadership. We need to work with managers and leaders to make sure they are ready to support teams who are working in this new way. And because that's essential. You can't do that after the fact. They need to understand how their jobs are going to stay. They need to be able to say, yes, I'm in. I'm going to support this. I want this to happen. They need to know how to lead without blame. So, and a number of other skills, right? And so we began working with them. And then at some point when they were capable of getting together and having a conversation, we would begin looking at what are the expectations for the teams and what do we want to see them doing, and then where are they now? And then we would do an assessment of some kind. There is an Agile Fluency diagnostic assessment that I like because maintains a lot of confidentiality for the teams and team members and so on. But you could do it by observation. You could just go around and observe what's going on in teams. There's lots of ways to do that. And find out how the teams are performing now, and how then does that match what we said we need from them, right? And then we create a plan.
Yeah.
Then
Great.
we create a plan for continuing to work with the leadership so that they know what behaviors are going to be needed from them, and begin working with coaches and teams to say, here's where we're going to make investments first. You know, one that comes up a lot is, does every team have the access to what we call a business liaison? It could be a product owner, product manager, functional analyst, somebody who can communicate to the team the changing expectations of the organization and the changing needs of the customers. And so very often there aren't enough of those in an organization. So that may be one of the ways we start. We may start by saying, okay, let's do some recruitment, hiring, get more of those folks in. Or, you know, it could be database people. We just don't have enough database people for the nature of our work, or whatever it is. So we start looking at those kinds of things. Another one that comes up very often is teams don't actually have the place to be a team. The boundary around, you know, what makes a team needs their, you know, they need their own clubhouse, right? And it doesn't matter whether they're an on-site co-located team or a remote team. You know, it could be a virtual clubhouse, but they need some place to do their work where they get some protection from outside interference, and they can really be creative together and collaborate together. So we would look at, you know, some those kinds of things often come out. Sometimes people have just been thrown together and handed work, and they're not being treated as teams at all. And so we need to begin with some basic collaboration skills. And, you know, what kind of collaboration do we need on this team to do the kind of work that the business needs from us? And it can, you know, there's all kinds of ways that can play out. But we need to, we want it to be the investments that we ask for and the recommendations we make to the organization. We want those to be reality-based, not just, here's the package, everybody always needs this, let's do that. But a much more nuanced approach. You know, again, tailoring the adoption or the transition. I think of it as transitioning, and we're going to be transitioning forever because the world is going to keep changing on us. It's not a transformation that is over on some date, because by whenever that happens, all kinds of new things are going to be in our environments that we haven't even thought of yet. Who knows what AI is going to bring to us? Who knows what machine learning is going to bring to us? Who knows what, you know, is there an end to the cloud? And if there is an end of the cloud capacity, what happens after that? You know, who knows what the future may bring? And so one of the things that we talk about in our book, in this new book, is the fostering in the organization of the ability to learn. Teams that can learn together create resilience. They can learn to respond to whatever kind of emergent issue comes their way, because they know they can learn their way through it. They are resilient. And we want that for the whole organization as well. But particularly we want it at the team level, because that's where value is produced.
Now, this new book of yours, Lead Without Blame, what else can you tell us about it? Is it out already, or is it coming?
It is out. It
out?
Came out. It was too much of last year. It was only available for pre-order, but it actually came out on September 27th. And so it's available. You can pay for it and get it right away now. And yeah. And I've got the QR code there is for Amazon.com. So there would be, but I do know it's on Amazon DE and other folks. I know people have told me they found it. And yeah, or you can go to the publisher's website and buy it there. But actually, if you were to write to me at or to my organization at onward@dianalarsen.com,
okay,
we can send you an excerpt of the book, and we can send you a discount code for buying the book from the publisher.
Nice.
It doesn't work on Amazon, but it works with if you buy it for the publisher. Nice. So I'm happy to make that offer. There's an excerpt that it contains the forewords and the first couple of chapters.
We will share that.
You could get a taster. You can
get
that's
a taste
of the book. Yeah,
I'd love to do that, and we can share it with the whole Agile Scale Camp audience. That would be great.
Absolutely, please do.
Nice.
So onward@dianalarsen.com.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And that'll be the way to get that. And then people can sign up for my mailing list if they want.
Of course, we all will. I promise. This was great. Very insightful. Thanks a lot for doing the interview. It's quite early where you're at, I guess, right now.
Not terribly at 10:30.
That's okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, mid-morning. So,
thanks again, and have a wonderful day. And I hope to talk to you soon. And we're looking forward to spreading the information in the video to all our visitors. Thank you so much. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
So this is where I will cut the video. Again, thank you. This was really interesting. I hope it went in a way that you felt good with. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was fine. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice and short, just a couple of questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's enough of a teaser for all those topics we touched. So I think that's great.
Right.
Is there anything else I can do for you as a thank you?
Well, if you happen to be on any conference organizing committees, future ones, I really would like to do more keynoting and traveling.
Okay.
And as you know, I'm probably not going to be taking on long-term. I mean, I'm getting older, and I'm probably not going to be taking on a lot of stressful long-term consulting engagements.
I see.
But I do want to stay connected to the Agile community and to be able to, answer people's questions, be a mentor. And one really good way to do that is when I keynote at a conference, I stay for the whole conference and I talk to people about the things that they're interested in. And so that's, I'm thinking that's one of the things that I will want to continue to do over time.
Cool.
And I love to travel. So
I am on the committee of Manage Agile in Berlin. It's a German conference, but usually they have English speaking keynote speakers every now and then, and I will talk to them, and also of course talk to Jens Koldewey. I mean, you have been at Agile World, I guess, and maybe there are some other things coming up.
Yeah.
So I'll keep that in mind. It would be lovely to have you in Europe in person.
Yes. I love those trips. Yeah.
Cool.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Very nice. So thank you so much, and have a good day. Have a good time. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.